Welcome to another introductory lesson in Adobe Illustrator. Today we're going to focus on some items about using a stroke. And the stroke is the part of the object that is the outer edge. So when I draw a shape, you will see there is an outer edge. Now I made this stroke a little bit larger just to, so you guys can see what I'm doing. And you can either do that in your control window at the top, or you can do it over here in the properties window, or you can use the actual stroke window itself. So if I go to window, stroke, this is what I want you to do. Go to window, stroke, and open up this stroke window here so you can really see what's going on. Now mine showed up with all these wonderful options, and if that ever happens while you're doing Illustrator, there is usually in a lot of the Adobe software a little flyout menu over here, and if this is all you see in your stroke window, you would want to go to this little listing button here and go to show options, and now all of a sudden you can see all the things we could do with our stroke just using the stroke window. So I have my stroke window on my screen, and I have a shape that has a stroke on it, and I'm going to draw just underneath here a little snaky shape just to show some of the other tools that are going on. Okay, so I have an object selected, and the weight is the thickness of the stroke. Usually it's measured in points, and each 1 point is 1/72 of an inch. So if I made this a 72 point thick stroke, you have a 1 inch border on your object. All right, so let's talk about cap. If you still have an object selected, and the cap is what happens at the very end of the line. So if I select this rounded cap, you can see now that my object has changed and put a rounded cap on there. So if I select a projecting cap, it looks like this. If I select this type of cap, it'll just end right at the very edge. When I have an object selected, there's an item down here called Align Stroke, and a line stroke determines where the stroke is compared to the object. And the picture's going to show you what's going on here. These lines represent the edges of the object, and this is the actual anchor point. And if you look closely at your object, you'll notice that the actual edge of the object, which is noted by this blue line here, that's the very edge of the object. The stroke goes beyond that and inside of it. The stroke is really an effect on the object. The object isn't where the stroke is. Like, I can't select this object. I'm clicking on the very edge of that. I can't select it until I get to the edge. Okay, so you can align the stroke to either fit inside the object. So now the actual edge of the object is all the way on the outside of the stroke. You can align the stroke to the outside of the object, or you can do the center, and that's kind of where it normally happens. Okay, so that's what a line stroke is. This part comes in handy. It can round the edges or bevel the edges, and if you look very closely at the corners right now, you can see what that is doing. And that's up to you. Normally, I think when you're doing a lot of design work, you'll end up not using the stroke very often, or you could perhaps convert the stroke into a shape before you're done. So we'll talk about that down the road. But for now, just so you know what this corner thing does, it will round those edges. Okay, dashed line. So if you are, now right now my weight is too big to actually show the dashed line, so let's bring this down a little bit. And there we go. Now you can start to see it. My thickness of the line was actually bigger than what the dash was telling me, so that's why you can see it there. But there we go. Like if you're doing some kind of like architectural type thing, or using dashed lines in your design, you can add that just by clicking dash line, and you can actually change the specs of the gap and make your own pattern as it goes around too. So you can have thick to thin, or whatever it is you want to do. You can make this even like a larger thing, and there's a lot of stuff you could do with this. Okay, so you can modify it and customize it however you want. There's also Arrowhead, so I'm going to use my line for that here, and you can actually add different types of arrowheads to the objects. Um, the size of the object will vary the size of the arrowhead, so they try to keep it somewhat in proportion to the object. Okay, so you can put it at the front or at the back end of the line. If you want to actually add a tail of a real arrow, you could do that as well. And there's all these like preset things in here that you could ever possibly use in your designs. They're here. Okay, so that's how you add arrowheads to the lines to the stroke. The profile is interesting, so I'm going to kind of reset this line now so you can see what's going on. And profile is the width of the object. So if I go from thin to thick to thin, my stroke now looks like a little piece of hair. It goes from thin to thick to thin. You could change that to any of these presets that are in here. Okay, so this is cool, like, you know, Charlie Brown's one hair on his head. You could draw that using the variable width. Okay, another tool, and you can see there's a fill on this because when I put it up on top of this other object, it's covering that. So there's a white fill on this, so I'd want to get rid of that. But anyway, one other tool I want to show you is this tool in here, and it really is a weird looking tool. Like, it looks like somebody's shooting a seahorse, but this tool here will control the width. This is the width tool. It controls the width of your stroke. So when you click and drag on these points, you can actually control the width. I can also change the profile. So if I needed to go from thin to thick to thin in certain spots, comes in really handy if you're doing some cartooning work. And you want to do some, control the emphasis of your line. You definitely can mess around with this width tool in the toolbox. It's a kind of a fun tool to have. Okay, so there we go. That's a lot of different ways to deal with your stroke. Remember, you can double click in there and you can change the colors, or you can change the colors in your swatch window. Just got to make sure that the stroke is on top of the fill, not the other way around, because then you'd be changing the fill instead of the stroke. All right, so stroke's got to be on top, so I clicked on that, and now I can change the color stroke, and that's how you do that. Okay, so that is a quick lesson on a lot of things that you can do with stroke, the stroke window, and using the width tool in the toolbox.